As soon as they change to green, we will be off. And there we go. Long straight here to begin the arts and cross with the men elite. We're going to have a different winner this time out because Mathieu van der Poel is absent. No fourth time in a row for him. Not even a chance to get one over on Dad either. His father Adri won this race 3 times. He could have taken the family GC lead, but we're looking around. Maybe a couple of his teammates from Alpecin Fenix Racing here today. There's the miss on the right side, trying to make his way up a little bit further down from rows 3 and 4. Looking out too to see what Tim Medlier can come up with as well.
If it's not one Van der Poel leading, it's the other one. So David Van der Poel leading him out with Lawrence Schweik on his wheel, and Wout already up to 3rd.
Again, a huge group to start. Not quite as big as the women's field. We've got 71 riders beginning today. We're right in the heart of the cross season. And David van der Poel is the first into these corners. Mathieu absent, and his great rival Wout van Aert, Belgian champion, down in what, 5th place at the moment. And we're already running. Iserbit down there, the smaller figure in what looks to be a huge army of riders in black and red. One rider down already there.
Yep, Jens Adams just losing the front wheel on that corner and causing a little bit of a tailback, bit of carnage on those early corners when everyone's so tightly packed. One rider goes down like that and it's really hard to avoid and just causes a few problems. And we see a few different options here. David van der Poel choosing to get back on the bike, ride round, keep some speed, try and save a bit of energy, try and not spike the heart rate too much with this long running section, and seems to be paying off, holding that leading position as Lawrence Schweik moves into 2nd, and is that Tim Medlier up to 3rd already.
Tim Medlier wearing 33, starting quite a bit of way down. Interesting, the first sorting out of the riders here, Ellen. I guess we'll know a lot more at the end of the first lap. That's Felipe Orts, Spanish national champion. Riding on the road now with Beache as well.
Exciting to see American Kerry Warner up in what looks to be maybe the top 20. Exciting to see him on camera.
Riding for the Connor Factory team.
So noticing what these riders are doing over this ditch here, it makes me reconsider the strategy we talked about with pitting during the women's race. You have to get off and run right next to the pit anyway. It may be more strategic to just get a fresh bike while you're already off and running.
Interesting to see. I mean, what's it like, Ellen, in these sort of this start of this race? It looks as if there's traffic everywhere. I mean, if you're feeling good, feeling strong, how on earth do you try and move up? But I guess there's a lot of luck involved as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there can be a bit of luck, and I think it's like balancing that patience with balancing that excitement where you're like, I feel really good, so is my effort more important right now, or is that same feel-good effort going to be more important 3 laps from now?
But it's Lawrence Schweik up towards the front. You can see Ton Aerts just up at a 2nd position. Wout van Aert moving down into around 7th and 8th at the moment.
American Curtis White of Cannondale Cyclocross World is riding a bit in front of Kerry Warner, who we were just talking about. So exciting to see a couple of Americans in this field today.
Good to get themselves on screen. Let's see if they can make themselves a feature of this race. As you look at Medlier going through, then it's Iserbit. For Nathan Kessel, not too far from the front either. Quinten Hermans as well, we saw him on the front row. Just coming through now. Schweik, who is a consistent figure, isn't he, Ian?
He certainly is, and this is the kind of real classic Belgian course, flat, muddy, little technical sections here and there that really suit kind of the strengths of Schweik. Tend tend to do better on the faster courses, and although it is muddy today, it still looks fast. It's still fairly easy going as such in a lot of the sections. You see these little broken up with tarmac sections, and the real deep mud sections are actually turning into runs. So a lot of the riding is still fast. We see a good start from Thomas Main there, probably up in the top 20. Young Brit just out the under-23 category, making his mark in the elites. He's had a bit of a tough start to the season, but finding the form now, and this is the time of year you want to find it.
Yeah, he's wearing the white, navy and luminous colours of Tourmans. Number 28 on his back, as easier a bit to come through the camera. Medley's made a good start, hasn't he? And there's Vincent Bastans, who's wearing number 9, just at the back of this group now.
See those little splits happening already, just the concertina effects through these kind of slower, more technical sections where on and off the bike as well. You just kind of a small gap opens up here and there. Someone puts a foot down in one of those technical sections and suddenly there's a 2-3 second gap, and it's hard to close to the best guys in the world.
David van der Poel already dropping down into that little bit of a gap to the second group. There he is, just off his bike now and running. In the meantime, it's Elias Herbits who's moved up into 3rd position. Laurens Sweeck, his teammate, in 1st. Toornaerts, the former Belgian champion, right up there. And he's a local to this area, is Toornaerts too. He was the last winner the last time that we're in action in the H2O Trofee. Won in Kortrijk in November. Toornaerts is the leader of the series by 43 seconds from Elias Herbits. Up to the stairs for the first time, and we're starting to see a bit of a pattern emerge now, and an order set to this race here, Ellen.
Yeah, it looks like this race is pretty strung out, with everyone only having maybe a couple of bike lengths in between, but definitely super fast racing, and I think it gets more challenging when you have more riders in that front group. But really curious to see where Wout van Aert is choosing to place himself in the field, if it's intentional or if he just doesn't have the legs to move up today. I guess we'll find out as the race goes on.
As we said, 5 races, 5 victories, unbeaten on the cross field so far this season. Winning in Solder the other day on the motor racing circuit, which was a World Cup, wasn't it? It's now a super prestige event.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to see a course as iconic as Zolder be almost, downgraded from World Cup to another event, but still looks just as iconic, just as hard racing. But yeah, just not a World Cup.
Bonnie hopping here as we come up to the finish line for the first time in just a moment's time. Felipe Orts on the right-hand side, Spanish champion. There's David van der Poel. I think beyond this position here, we'll be looking at it being difficult to be involved in this shaker, but it's a big group, isn't it? Look at Toornaerts at the front, trying to stretch it out even more. It's going to be roughly a, an 8.5 minute, maybe just under lap to begin the race. Toornaerts is going to be the leader after the first lap, so an 8:19, I think that is. Iserbit, Hermans, Sweeck and Merlier with Van Aert, Bastans, Michael van Toornaert, Cornet, Van Kessel at 3 seconds. Then Van den Bos, Thomas Main, as you mentioned. Ian, there's Felipe Orts and Thijs Aerts as well.
Yeah, that was almost a bunch sprint coming down for those bonus seconds, but interestingly that Toon got the jump on the group, got a nice little gap, and then it almost looked like the others realising that the overall, not potentially over already, but the 2 prominent riders in the overall is Toon and Ellie Isabit, and they just seem to let Isabit take second place. Toon just caught Isabit napping there. He was caught behind Hermans, and yeah, once Toon had the jump on him, it was no bringing him back for those bonus seconds.
That was interesting there, so early on in the race. And then, of course, there's the bonus seconds on offer, and it was Sweeck who pulled over. Isabit, as Ian was saying, caught out. And well, Toornaerts increasing his lead in the general.
Yeah, I guess, you know, there's so many strategies that I think it's even hard to speculate on, but definitely seems like Toon and his team have decided that putting in a little bit of extra effort on that start-finish straight is worth it for the overall. Those points add up, as we saw in the women's race. Denise Betsma going a little bit harder to get those bonus points were what made the difference for really no change in the GC despite getting second to Lucinda.
Wout van Aert, the only rider who's still riding here. You saw him swing wide on that first 180. He's still on his bike while everybody else is running in.
Yeah, there's always that kind of way up between running and riding, and he's obviously a very, very good runner. So interesting that right now he just feels confident in that group, and he just wants to conserve a bit of energy by staying on the bike and riding the long, sweeping line around the outside of those corners, conserving a bit of energy over those who are running. And interesting that, yeah, he's not really panicking to hold the wheel in front. He's just looks like a man on form and a man who's confident. And yeah, I don't want to say he's playing with them right now, but he just seems to be sitting there, conserving a bit of energy and working things out, really, as we see the first bike changes, lapping a bit into the race now. And yeah, like you said, if they've got to get off and run over that ditch anyway, you might as well run into the pits and change your bike. In previous years, where it hasn't been so muddy, we've been, as Felipe Horse proved me wrong, as he actually rides that ditch rather than bunny hopping it, he just kind of wheelied through it and got his way through it. So it is possible to wheelie and ride through those ditches, but most people opt in to take the safer line today and getting off and running through, as we see Quinten slinging himself along those barriers and staying on the bike and keeping those cleats clear of any mud, really helping the situation. As we see Corne van Kessel has to take a foot out, just really struggling to get it back in with that sandy, clayey combination of mud getting in your shoe. Really have to stamp on the pedals to try and get your foot back in, which isn't ideal. But we'll see there Wout just apply some pressure through that really hard section and move up about 4 places. But yeah, see Quinten looks strong, and we saw in Fayetteville taking his first World Cup win. This kind of power course really suits his strengths, and yeah, riding that first position and stretching it out. But Schweik following right now.
His engine has come on leaps and bounds as well. He impressed last year, I think it was at the Giro d'Italia. He rode round and impressed in some of the hilly and the mountain days. He is a top bike rider, no matter what the type of bike or the surface. As Wout van Aert, as you mentioned, is up to third now. There's Eli Iserbyt, who lost a little bit of a position. Tournaerts just behind him. And just to recap the bonus seconds, it was 15 seconds to Tournaerts, 10 going to Iserbyt. So that's a 5-second swing already. Today, as we stand, without the result of this race and what might happen from here to the end, that now means 43 seconds becomes 48 seconds. And very important, as you mentioned, Ellen, the overall is in the back of everybody's minds.
Yeah, anyone in contention is considering a lot of different factors today. The overall win, the win today, and also the fact that we are smack dab in the middle of a lot of racing right now, a lot of World Cups, a lot of different series being played out right now. So I think maybe we're seeing Wout van Aert not really wanting to do any more work than he has to. If he can stay on his bike and just go for a ride and not have to do quite as much running, not have to do quite as much work on a day like today, I think you know, that would be strategic for him compared to some of the more hard-fought wins that he's had to work for in the last week or so.
That was Corne van Kessel getting rid of his glasses there. No need for those, with Wout van Aert on the back of this leading pair now. Tournaerts just behind as Eli Iserbyt is caught a little in no man's land. It's 3 riders, Eli Iserbyt and another 3 riders. You mentioned that there's a lot of cross coming up here, Ellen. Well, Tournaerts talked before today's race about how confident he was actually about being able to increase his lead in the general classification. He says that the next 3 crosses coming up, all in this series, are very, very much suited to him, and he thinks that he can add seconds here. And of course, when we go to the Sven Nys Grand Prix in a couple of years' day, and in New Year's Day, first race of 2022, and then we'll go to Herentals after that. So some big days coming up for Tournaerts.
And that confidence can go a long way, especially with how much racing is ahead. Having that little bit of confidence and feeling good about your form and your setup and your team support and all of that, it can make a world of difference, because if you have any holes in your situation, if your fitness isn't where it needs to be, if your mechanics aren't dialed, that's when these things start to become really evident during events, during weeks and challenging times like this.
Quinten Hermans, Laurens Sveek, Wout van Aert, en Elisabeth Cornet van Kessel, there's Toonaerts, Michael van Toerenhout. Some quality names just reeling off the tongue, and of course we're without Lars van der Aar, we're out without Mathieu van der Poel and Tom Pidcock today. We're still treated to a stellar cast here.
Yeah, this is a great race and a really great field, and it's kind of refreshing to get to see some, not different names, but some of the names that we saw maybe earlier in the season back at the front. Getting to see Quinten Hermans leading is, you know, great. A little bit of a callback to earlier in the year. Having Eli Iserbyt, he's been consistently, you know, in the top 5. Obviously had a big streak of wins early on, so it's nice to get to see these more pure cross racers sort of back at the front.
Past the goalpost they go. Thankfully behind the goalpost. It'd be a nightmare trying to goalkeep. Just have to have all the bike ruts in the middle there. You'll be watching the ball straight into your hands, taking a step forward. In the meantime, coming towards the end of lap 2 here. They'll go left and then right onto the road. Look around this time from Quinten Hermans, and it's thinned out quite a bit, hasn't it, Ian? We're still with a nice big group of riders here, or 2 groups of riders. However, it's a very different situation to the one we saw 8 minutes ago.
It certainly is. You see much more tactical affair in the men's race, as Laurens Sveek didn't want to lead him down the start-finish straight, but Wout more than happy to take on that task, and just deceptively fast. You see just rock solid on the bike, and you look at the riders behind gritting their teeth as it's almost 2 races developing now. We've got the race on the day, and then the overall here with Iserbyt and Toon just watching each other to a certain extent. So yeah, Michael van Toornout tried to jump across. Ellie kind of almost blocks for him behind, and yeah, it's going to be a race within a race today.
Looks as though we're going to have a 7-lap race as well. I was just trying to add things up there. The graphic said 6 before it changed to 7. I saw the gentleman holding up 5 laps to go, but I think we have settled just about on a 7-lap race today. So we're starting the 5th from final lap. So just under 5 laps to go here with Wout van Aert.
See Wout leading now on the running section, and this is a real strength of his. It'll be interesting to see whether he changes his tactic over previous laps. We saw him getting off and riding that longer route, saving energy, but now he's on the front. Does he want to put him under pressure on this run and, without pun intended, run away with this one?
Ellen, you were going to say something.
I was going to say I'm really enjoying watching Quinten Hermans' line choice today. He's taking slightly different lines from the rest of the field, at least at the front, and it's interesting to watch sort of him carry more momentum through some of these trickier sections. So it's something we saw just before they got off and ran, and in a couple of other spots that I don't know if I'll be able to point out, but it's definitely interesting to watch him sort of go off the beaten path, if you will.
It's nice to pick out those details for us. We'll keep alerting us to those.
I will try.
Fascinating to get your gut. Well, it's fascinating for somebody like me, a layman sitting here just enjoying the drama and the spectacle, to get both of your input in that. And I'm just interested on your take again, Ellen, on that last little section where we saw Wout van Aert, the only man to stay on his bike again.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I don't really necessarily, you know, have a great take on it. I was a rider similar to Wout, only in this sense that you know, I would try to ride where I could, just because in a race, especially where there's so much running, if there's 1 or 2 sections that you can stay on your bike and just, you know, try to reduce the amount of time that you're running, it can help. And so I don't know exactly what Wout was up against today, but sometimes just, you know, you're just trying to reduce the sheer volume.
In the meantime, pardon me, Pardon me for putting in there,
Ooh.
but there's chaos in the pits. There's chaos in the pits. We've got Eli Izerbit, who seems to have lost quite a few places there, caught up. I'm sure we'll get a replay. I hope we'll get a replay, but that might be costing Eli Izerbit an opportunity to fight things out there, because he was caught out to the left-hand side. In the meantime, Wout van Aert is continuing to press on. Quentin Hermans on the right as we look at it, just in the navy white and fluorescent colours in second position. Then you have Laurens Sweeck, who is wearing number 7 on his back. Corneven Kessel, who's run a really good race, the Dutchman, also for the Tournemans team. And here is Toon Aerts. Now then, just look to the base of the picture, left-hand side.
Just a tangle of bikes in the end, and that's the issue. At World Cup events, each country has to pick a pit box to go in. Whereas at these races, the mechanics just go where they want. And we see with this pit in particular, obviously you're off the bike to run over the ditch. It's just makes so much more sense to be that very first pit box. And what you've ended up with is all the Belgians going into that first pit box. And it just means when you're together in a group, there's bikes and bodies and handlebars and wheels getting connected. And it's just a real horrible situation. And it takes a big call from one of the mechanics to actually be the bigger man and say that's not the place to be, and actually move down a box or two and just get away from that kind of cluster of riders and bikes in that situation. But yeah, that's the problem. There needs to be some better communication between the guys there. But yeah, led to Ellie losing quite a bit of time there, and that's going to affect the overall.
Well, questions to be asked then of the Paul Salson Bingoal mechanic. The whole team maybe for their positioning. Of course, very easy to talk, isn't it, after the horse has bolted? But
see, Ellie's still not into view, and that's a big time loss.
He's behind Merlier, he's behind Oorts, and now he comes into view.
Thomas Main chasing him down.
Oh dear. Back to the front, and this is the trio. If you're wondering why there are so few people here, it's because I'm afraid there's been all sorts of mess in terms of judicial decision on the banning of fans, or as it turned out, it's been overturned in the courts, the non-banning of fans, but the ruling overturned by the Supreme Court in Flanders, too late for the organisers to allow supporters in. So that's why we have no supporters today, I'm afraid, or very few of them here in Lunart. But we do have a race for the first time in 2 years, which is an improvement, and we're seeing quite a spectacle with Wout van Aert yet again at the front, but he's not having it all his own way just yet.
No, and it's hard to say whether that's on purpose or maybe not on purpose, whether he's just trying to slowly apply pressure at the front and see how much of a gap he can get with a little bit of effort, or if really Quentin and Laurens are kind of putting the pressure on him today.
Michael Vertouren out there. Now then, we're starting to see a first little bit of a gap for Wout van Aert at the front of this cross race. Those who've been watching all season, for the past few years in fact, will know that that is not a strange thing. But, as you were just saying, Anne, it's taken a little longer maybe today. Interesting to see whether that gap's closed again here, or if the elastic is going to snap. Just keep your eyes on Wout van Aert. Meantime, we're watching Toon Aerts. Here is Wout van Aert. Quentin Hermans is the man who's second wheel chasing him. Staying on his bike just about. It's a good save from van Aert there.
Yeah, that's one of those sections of really deep mud and the ruts developing, and you hit one of those ruts and you do your utmost to try and stay in the rut all the way to the end of it. And we see there Wout just kind of lost balance midway, and you end up getting cross-rutted, so your wheel turns within the rut, but the bike can't actually turn because the bike's stuck in the rut and your weight's all going to the left. But saved it well, unclipped that left foot and took like a flying dab and got back on the straight and narrow. But it does mean that's allowed Sweeck and Hermans to get back to his wheel just before the crucial road section. I'm sure if he'd hit this road section with a gap, he would have applied more pressure, try to maintain the gap, if not open it up on this section, but it's a whole different ball game with two riders in your wheel.
That was the gap to Vertouren out. In the meantime, this is for Kessel and Aerts, and a reminder that Aerts is the leader of the series by 48 seconds after the extra bonus seconds he picked up today. But crucially, Eli Izerbit, who is in second position, is a long way back. And here is the result of what you were just talking about there, Ian. No big pressing on moment from Wout van Aert, holding up, waiting. Instead, it's Quinten Hermans, Ellen, who seems to want to take the initiative at the end of lap 3 of 7.
Yeah, this is a really impressive ride from Quinten Hermans, especially given for some of these riders starting this season in the U.S. with that big racing block that we had over here, to see them still performing super well into late December and now almost early January is really a testament to, you know, their hard work and probably dedication to a bit of recovery as well. So really impressive ride so far.
Approaching 25 minutes of racing. Just under 4 laps to go now for Hermans, Van Aert, Sweeck, and these are the chasers. Gap now at 30 seconds from Orts, Merlier, and this is where Izerbit is. So 31 seconds from the front. I think you're talking, well, at least 15 to 20 seconds there from Toon Aerts as well. And we're focusing on for the overall as Hermans is here.
So the gaps have gone out fast on this race. During the first lap, we had almost 30 riders within 30 seconds of each other, and now we have only 10 riders within 30 seconds of each other. So it's really interesting to see how quickly this race has spread out.
Good ride, I should say run as well from Turen out here. And Toon Aerts isn't far away. Smelling blood, knowing that Eli Izerbit is a long, long way back now. Meantime, Van Turen gets closer and closer once more. It's Wout van Aert who's ridden the entirety of that section almost.
So this may be a little bit of over-analysis, but if you'll indulge me, Rob, I'm watching Wout in this section a little bit more closely. Thank you. And so it looks like when he remounts like 2 turns prior to the other riders, he has a really clear runway to just get on his bike and immediately start pedaling. And it's not as bogged down as 2 turns later when Sweeck and Hermans are remounting. It's slow, and they're still remounting in a not ideal section with not ideal conditions. And so I wonder if Wout found out that he was able to remount faster and with better momentum and then be able to ride and sort of take that really good speed into that corner.
Those details, Ellen, those details, that's what we want to hear. And is that sort of something that I'm fascinated by this. Is that something you find out in the warm-up, in the pre-ride, from previous races, or just during the race?
Definitely at the very latest in warm-up and in pre-ride. He may have insight from previous years or other races. Sometimes Wout could very well, and a lot of these riders could very well have someone else out on course saying, okay, I noticed this here. I was watching these riders, X, Y, and Z. Or, he definitely could have found that out on his own, but it's definitely not a call that you would try to make during the race. There's a little bit too much risk to take during the event.
Well, he knows this course, let's not forget. I mean, it's all the talk of Mathieu van der Poel winning the last 3 in the men's division. Wout van Aert has won 2 of the last 6 events held here. He was a winner in 2014 among the seniors. The year after, Sven Nys won for the final time. He was a winner 5 years ago. In fact, he was the last Belgian man to win here. It's been 5 years since a Belgian man won one of the biggest Belgian crosses. So the home fans watching at home, because not many of them on the course today, will be hoping for one of these guys at the front to do the business. Here's another one of them. Number 5, Michael van Turen.
So this is the unique line. Sorry, Rob.
Please.
That's the corner that we just saw with Wout and Hermans taking a different line than Sweeck. These are some of the corners that they're going a little bit wider and carrying more momentum than some of the tighter, more burned-in lines that previous races have taken.
Again, that rut's become very warm throughout the day, but we're going from a 3 to a 4. 2 riders from the same team going to be up there as well in Sweeck and Van Turen. Ian, does that change things?
It certainly does. It means that they can play the old 1-2 if they want to, especially on a course like Lunau, where such a long start-finish straight that you can end up kind of with those attacks from the back of the group like you'd see in a road race, actually. So interesting now that Wout just took a look round, saw Michael van Turnhout making contact, and one thing to note is Michael van Turnhout, a little bit like Felipe Orts, hopped the ditch going into the pits, which means not only was he faster through that section, he's changing bikes much further down the pit. So he's riding the ditch, carrying his momentum through that pit lane and changing near none of the other Belgians. So he has a clear bike change right near the corner up the other end of the pit. So almost like a double whammy for him there, staying out of trouble and actually riding that section faster and cut the deficit by a few seconds there, and that's allowed him to get onto the back of this group.
Well, you can tell that Felipe Orts has been spending some time in Belgium, can't you, with that ability in the mud, because I can tell you where he lives in Alicante, it's not that muddy.
Yeah, it's one of those things you just have to get to grips with it. Each race almost, it's going to sound silly, but almost has its own kind of unique mud or set of ground conditions, and this is kind of a sandy clay topsoil which becomes super slippy in the turns but also hard going in the straight sections as well. So yeah, each race is slightly different, and a rider like Felipe Orts, who obviously isn't from Belgium, is just going to kind of build up almost a database in his head and with his mechanics of kind of the different course conditions and different tyre choices, different tub pressures, as he kind of builds up his experience doing these races and getting to know the lines at different courses for that ditch, learning how to ride that one in particular. He hasn't been doing that since he was kind of 14, 15 years old like the other riders. So yeah, learning on the job for some of the foreign riders.
Interesting yet again, Ellen, that nobody went into the pit on that particular side. It's almost abandoned at that side.
Yeah, this side of the pit has definitely been maybe a couple of seconds for the mechanics to take a deep breath, but also I wonder if the course is drying out a little bit. It's hard to tell, but just looking at Wout's yellow fork, it doesn't look like the bikes are collecting quite as much mud. So, you know, sometimes that can make the courses harder. It can make the tires plug up more, but it might not be necessary to pit quite as often if the course has been ridden a ton. It might be drying out.
Well, Toonaert still in that group behind. There's Wout van Aert, Michael van Toorenhout, Quinten Hermans and Laren Sweek coming up to the end of another lap, not too far away now. There's that right turn here, a quick shot left and then a 90-degree right onto the Breksweg. Toonaert, though, we all know he seems to get stronger as the races go on, doesn't he? He's a man for a hard race, for a long race. There he is with Corneer van Kessel. And he's putting time into Eli Iserbyt. Where is Eli Iserbyt? He's not in this group. He's behind. Just coming into that last shot there, as we see. Just over half an hour ridden. Top four on the right-hand side. It's an open race. Let's look at Toonaert's behind, trying to bury himself to get across. A marked difference between the pace of the two groups there.
Certainly is. Again, no one in that front group particularly wanting to take it on. And Toon, I don't know whether he was looking around shouting at Corneer van Kessel for a turn, or he was just looking around to see where Iserbyt is, but he won't be able to see Eli at all behind him. That's a big gap now. And I don't know, the way Eli reacted to that bike situation, I don't know whether that's really kind of affected him mentally going forward in this race, and he's kind of thrown his toys out the pram slightly, but yeah, that gap's significant now in the overall.
He's developed a bit of a reputation as well as Eli Iserbyt as a man for the early season. I guess it's fair to say he seems to start very well, maybe fades a little towards the end of the year. Is that fair maybe, Ellen, or am I being a little bit harsh?
No, I think in years past that's been a little bit more of the case. I think something I've been really impressed with this year is his consistency and kind of carrying that form into the later races. Today's race obviously notwithstanding. You know, and I think as these fields have gotten so much stronger with Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, Tom Pidcock, and the like coming into these later races. Obviously, we haven't seen Eli Iserby at the front quite as much, but he's still having super solid results and super consistent rides. So I think this year, it seems like he's made a really big change, either in his program or just in his fitness or whatever, that he is sort of staying up there more than he has in years past.
Tornard still on his bike here. Just to finish the point about Eli Iserby, he's 24 now, hasn't won since the French World Cup event in Besançon in November. Last victory on home soil came in Kokstede. It's in November as well, a little earlier in the month. He is, though, still leading, as you mentioned, both the UCI World Cup and the Super Prestige competitions overall. So that consistency that Ellen was talking about paying off as the leader of the World Cup and the Super Prestige. And, well, on a course here that he's won in the under-23 level, but today it's going to take a minor miracle for him to get back into this race. It's the 4 leaders, followed by the 2 chasers.
We have a lead change at the front.
And yet that lead change now, it looks as though it's been taken up by, is that Van Turenhout?
Yeah, and he rode the same section as Wout van Aert.
That's the way to go then, it seems, as he's through the pits. Van Turenhout with a little bit of a gap. Now Quinten Hermans, Wout van Aert and Laurens Swick. This is Van Kessel. Arts, every single rider there into the pits.
We saw again there Michael Van Turenhout riding the ditch into that pit section, and I'm sure it's worth at least a couple of seconds as we saw everyone else slow down, dismount, run over it, and then bike exchange and get back on. So just a little advantage, and I'm sure he knew he was riding that and the others weren't, so that's why he went to the front just before that section, applied some pressure and really opened it up. But as we hit that pure power section, Wout van Aert just shows his strength and immediately goes past. And I think this is one of those situations where Wout kind of feels that everyone's going hard, so it's time for him to go a little bit harder.
Well, given what happened in Namur when Wout van Aert was watching on the telly, but Michael Van Turenhout was out there winning, tell me, I'd be a little bit more wary of Van Turenhout than they have been in the past. Yes, he's 28 now, but anybody who wins that World Cup in Namur is somebody to be taken seriously. Just the 2nd victory of the season. He's had plenty of podiums. He is having a very, very good, consistent year.
He certainly is. He's doing his utmost to try and stay with Wout here, but you see him staying wide on the grass, a little bit of extra grip, and then kind of hitting a late apex, turning across kind of the traditional racing line.
Oh, there's an issue. Wow. There's an issue. Now then, can it switch again? It's certainly let Van Turenhout straight back into it.
I think that confirms that Wout was going a little bit harder this lap just to try and force things, but we see how slippy it is there. I don't think anyone really appreciates until it goes wrong how slippy that is. We see just begins to lose the back, and yeah, once the wheels were out of line, that was kind of no bringing that back in the end, and forces them both off the bike. But yeah, both pros handled it well, and well, straight back into his rhythm. But yeah, just highlights how slippery it is. You never really can tell on TV how much grip is there, but yeah, not much by the looks of things.
Entertaining battle. I think he's becoming a duel, isn't it, Ellen?
Absolutely. This race is super exciting, kind of what I had, maybe wished for at the beginning of this commentary, and it's super exciting to see sort of how Van Turenhout's season has gone this year, especially after his win at Namur. I think he has much more of a target on his back than he maybe did a couple months ago. So I think this could be a really interesting battle. It looks like he really does have Wout working, including that small mistake that he made in the corner. Like you said, it looks like he's going faster than he has in previous laps. So really excited to see these two sort of duel it out in the subsequent laps.
It's superb to see Wout van Aert being pushed and Michael Van Turenhout doing the pushing. Back in the meantime to 3rd and 4th as Hermans. Van Aert again putting his foot down, again trying to just get away, but the elastic not quite snapping yet. They're pushing everything there.
Yep, you see Michael van Turnhout's mechanics, or maybe Lauren Schweik's mechanics, just pulling the barriers out of the way just to give him a bit of extra racing room.
The speed at which they dismount and then roll onto those stairs as well. The skill required, as well as everything that's being done on the limit. And remember, your heart rate's up there, the legs are screaming at you. It's not just carrying up those little bits of skill on and off the bike, the mounting, the dismounting. It's doing it while you're really pushing your heart rate and everything else, your body to the limit. It's absolutely spectacular, this to see, as we see Wout van Aert pushing, pumping, going, flying. He's being followed by Michael van Turnhout. This is Quinten Hermans. Then you have Lauren Schweik, not far behind Turnhout and Hermans' teammate. That is Corné van Kessel. Van Aert is on a mission here. Van Aert is pulling away, and this might be the moment. This might be the moment now, Ellen.
It very well could be, especially going into this this pavement section. I think these sort of straight power sections for a rider like Van Aert, they can be super advantageous. But I don't think that Van Turnhout is going to give up without a fight.
Well, he is a fighter, and as we alluded to, anybody who wins that World Cup in Namur is an absolute superstar. It's one of the most savage courses on the whole circuit. But look at the legs go there from Wout van Aert. He's on a mission. He's on the moment. He's on the money. He's coming up to what I think will be a couple of laps to go now. The end of lap 5. Yes, 2 laps will remain. And Wout van Aert, the Belgian champion, looking to make it 6 from 6, hoping to become the first Belgian winner of the event since he won it 5 years ago. 40 minutes, 13 seconds for him. Now, what's the gap to his compatriot, but enemy here, Michael van Turnhout? It is 11 seconds. A look behind from Van Turnhout, but he's got to keep riding. If he waits for these guys, it's all over.
Certainly is. I think you saw the power of Wout down the start-finish straight. His rear tub's quite soft to get the grip on the off-road sections. It was more or less snaking his way down that straight on the tarmac. But the advantage for this group is Toon is in there and he's racing for the overall. So he's just getting to the front of that group and just riding as hard as he can until the race is up. So they might be able to take advantage of that and actually gain that kind of final podium position. But he's just going to concentrate on the overall and just ride as fast as he can. As we see Ellie.
Well, this is the gap that Turnhout is interested in, isn't it? It's the gap not to this quartet here, but to the next rider. So you're looking already at 30 seconds to this group for him. Remember, Turnhout's coming across at 31. You're looking at 40 seconds to Eli Iserbyt. So 40 seconds plus the 5 he's already taken. Wow. It's going to be over a minute and a half as things stand in the general classification for Turnhout over Eli Iserbyt. And look at this, Wout van Aert is all alone. He's without equal. Michael van Turnhout is running. Oh, he can't see the man in front of him.
You just see the change in body language from Wout from the earlier laps. There's just a little bit more urgency now, and you can actually see kind of the upper body actually moving slightly when he's kind of pushing out of corners. The earlier laps, he just looks super in control, and unfortunately it looked like he was playing with him a little bit and trying to kind of win this race, putting out the least energy possible really. With so many races in so many days in this period, if you can win a race with using a small amount of energy, then why not?
Well, the longer his ability in these sort of races continues, I think he's proving day by day. You could argue about who's the best on the cross field because there's Mathieu van der Poel to throw into the equation, but I think that Wout van Aert is proving that he's the most complete male rider out there at the moment, isn't he, Ellen?
I would say so. I think, you know, he's had a couple of years where he hasn't really been able to compete with Van der Poel, you know, quite as much, but it seems like this year, you know, injuries notwithstanding, yeah, I mean, I just think that Wout is kind of in a league of his own, and as things progress, I hope to see Mathieu back out there and healthy, and I'm really curious to see how Wout's going to be able to stack up against him.
And then whether his aim's going to be on the road. Of course, I'm getting excited and looking ahead to July here, but this man's capable of anything. Remember, a winner on Mont Ventoux. We'll just leave that there. Here he is on the cross field again. It's natural terrain for him. And Still with this lead. There's Michael van Torenhout right inside. Then the group to the next riders. And Torenhout has still put in a great ride here, whatever happens. And he has to keep fighting because anything can happen in cross. As Torenhout now is starting to look up to the podium.
Really interesting to see the two riders on the back of that group now were Quinten Hermans and Laurens Schweik, who were actually the two that tried to go with Wout van Aert on the previous lap. And it seems like they just went kind of into the red a little bit above their limit, and paying the price for that now. And actually, the two riders that were off the pace at that point, Toon Aerts and Corne van Kessel, have actually overtaken those, and they look like the two stronger riders now battling out for that final place on the podium.
Head of the race still is Wout van Aert, wearing that Belgian driekleur, the tricolour, ahead of his compatriot from Torenhout. And yeah, the body language has changed, hasn't it? He looks a different animal out there now.
It looks like he's actually breathing hard, maybe for the first time in the last 30 or 40 minutes.
It's incredible, isn't it, when you contrast it with Van Torenhout, who maybe has started to fade. We know that Torenhout is a bit of a diesel, isn't he? He sort of continues strong throughout the race, but you certainly see it contrasting with the rest of the guys, and Van Aert does look in a different league, doesn't he?
He does, and I say this about him and Mathieu van der Poel. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, could you at least, pretend to be trying a little harder, maybe just for your competitors, just out of a little bit of sensitivity?
We might have another one of the big three back in the next few days with Tom Pidcock anyway. But we will see. There is Wout van Aert for now. He's still got to finish the job, remember. A minute he has his gap though, and he's looking very, very good value. Next time he comes through the finish, he'll take the belt, and he's on his way to doing that.
Going through this, we're not there quite yet, but we're approaching, like you said, the last lap, going on the start-finish straight. I received a note from former U.S. champion Stephen Hyde, kind of for the viewers at home. He says, the pavement looks like it's a rest area. It is not. And I think that's important for people when you get on that pavement section. It looks like it might be a place to sit up and rest. But in a field like this, where the racing is so tight and so fast and hard, you'd love to be able to sit up. And if you sit up, you'll lose 5 or 10 places. So I think it's important context that there really is no obvious place to rest on a course like this.
Perhaps important to add as well, and we heard a few of the ladies saying in the post-race interviews that the wind was blowing quite a bit out there on course as well. I've just been looking at some of the ticker tape blowing, and when you get onto those more exposed sections, as Stephen was mentioning to you in his little note, that can affect things as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it can completely take a pretty innocuous section on course and just make it into an absolute sufferfest, depending on the direction that the wind's blowing. And it can make someone like Michael van Torenhout, who, is kind of in no man's land riding alone right now, it can make his effort a lot more tedious.
I say, in terms of the morale, it's going to be in no man land as well for Michael van Torenhout, because he knows realistically it's going to take a superhuman effort to close the gap. But of course he doesn't want to relinquish the second place to those behind as well. He's in a really difficult position as Van Torenhout, as Wout van Aert still riding like a dream, riding away to take the bell lap. He's going to go left here, a sharp ride again onto that concrete section that, as we've just learned from Stephen Hyde, is no rest. And here comes Van Torenhout chasing him. And there are other riders about to be lapped. There are other riders, I think, who are on their way to being taken out as well.
Yeah, it's an issue we saw. Sorry, Ian, go ahead.
We see Toon closing that gap. That was definitely a larger gap last time we saw Van Torenhout to Toon there. So I'm sure Toon Aerts has been really boosted by the fact that he's got such a large gap on Elizabeth in terms of the overall. I'm sure he's being told the gap by the pit crew or Sven Nys, his manager, out on course. So that's only going to buoy his kind of motivation as we go towards this last lap to chase harder. And I'm sure he'd like a second place to go with the extension in the overall.
He powered through that finish line again, did Wout van Aert there. He powered through it, and he's off in search of the victory. He's taken the belt. Laatste ronde then for Wout van Aert. Look at what's happened to the gap. 24 seconds to Van Turenhout. It's a 13-second swing further in favour of Van Aert. Here's Toon Aert at 33 seconds. And just remember that 33-second gap, because it is the gap from Toon Aert at 33 to Eli Iserbyt, whatever it might be in just a few moments, which is going to be the difference in the general. 48 seconds at the minute.
Really interesting.
Eli's a bit not yet across. Pardon me, sorry, Ian.
I think last time round, Toon Aert was only 31 seconds off of Wout at that point, so actually only lost 2 seconds to Wout on that lap. And considering the time gaps to everyone else, that's a phenomenal lap time from Toon.
Now, Eli Iserbyt is right at the top of your picture there. He's going to be a long, long way behind. I would hazard a guess that he's going to be over a minute behind Toon Aert as well. We were talking 40 seconds at the last lap. So Toon Aert's ride is that good. He's put a lot of time yet again into Eli Iserbyt. Let's have a look here. It's going to be a minute and 8 seconds. A minute and 8 seconds then for Toon Aert over Eli Iserbyt. And a big day for the general classification for Toon Aert, regardless of what happens here with Wout van Aert, Helen.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's so hard to predict what's going on in these racers' minds, but I think for Toon, I'm sure he has a good sense of how far behind Eli is from him. And I think now he's seeing how close Van Turenhout is. And I think at this point, he doesn't have anything to lose. If he has a little bit left to give, he can continue to pull out that gap a little bit more and maybe try to, you know, risk it all, if you will, for second place. So, I'm really curious to see how this last lap plays out, as it looks like Van Turenhout is fading a little bit, and it seems that Toon is really just coming into it.
Not even in the picture, as Van Aert is already out of the pits and riding again. Here is Michael Van Turenhout now being wheeled on. He is now going to approach the pits. Rides that little bit of a dip. He's off his bike onto a new one. But that's a big gap now on Wout van Aert, who's finally doing some marathon training. After staying on his bike for most of this race, is riding away. Here's Toon Aert, and yeah, that's a really small gap. Van Turen out there just going around the corner. That could be something that could change in this final lap.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot closer than I'm sure Michael Van Turenhout would want it to be, as we see kind of it concertinas up here with this super slow section, and that's going to give Toon kind of a lot of hope. Seeing Michael Van Turenhout, it kind of almost feel like touching distance, but in real terms it's still quite a decent advantage for Michael. It just depends how fatigued he feels right now. It's not just this race in his leg, it's the build-up of the previous races that they've done in the past kind of 10 days. But Toon really riding smart and yeah, getting the most out of this possible.
Yeah, Dendermonde on Boxing Day, then we had on the 27th, shifted from its former Boxing Day position, was the race over at Zolder. And on New Year's Day, we're all back in action again, aren't we? New Year's Day, there is much more action to come, remember. We'll be at the Grand Prix Sven Nys in Baal. Looking at Wout van Aert here, on his way to victory. Barring any problems, a victory lap this for the Belgian champion. 5 wins in 5 appearances since his return to the crossfield. It's been a very happy Christmas. It looks like being another prosperous new year for Wout van Aert. And he still powers on. He still doesn't look like he's fatiguing. He's getting stronger, if anything.
Looks like Wout is dealing with, you know, an issue that we faced a lot during the women's race, which is the lapped traffic. I don't think they're being as judicious with pulling the lap riders here as they do during the World Cups. So it's probably not an issue for Wout, given that the racing isn't nearly as tight as it was in the women's field, but definitely something that the further back riders are going to have to face and hopefully safely navigate for all parties.
I had my heart in my mouth when Lucinda Prom was going around that final corner, and there was the confusion with riders being taken out. Thankfully, it was all done correctly.
I think she was a woman on a mission. There wasn't anyone who was going to be able to get her off the course, try as they might. So thankfully that situation was fine.
Even if you are one of the riders we pulled out, it's a brave commissaire to stop the rainbow jersey, isn't it? As we see Wout van Aert here, the former rainbow jersey, out there now. And now the Belgian champion up here on his way with no issue at the minute. This is this traffic that you talked about, Ellen. Riders to catch, riders to go past. And we look back to the man who is second on the course at the minute. This is Michael van Toerenhout. Meantime, 5 minutes of fame for Jelle Laerts there of the Young Cycling Talents team. Problem was, it probably might be normally 5 minutes of fame. It's 5 seconds when you've got Wout van Aert flying past you. The camera already moves on to the next rider.
I'm sure the commissaires are implementing that 80% rule, which is in place by the UCI to try and stop this happening. But I'm sure it's probably just the speed of Wout van Aert that's causing the issue of the riders not being the 80% down when they go through that section, but actually losing so much time in one lap to the speed of Wout that they're getting caught.
Oh, the speed of Wout just about helping keeping up right there again as he caught the wrong rut.
Yep, interesting that he's made that mistake a couple of times now. Shows that he is trying, he is human, but another kind of commanding performance from him today.
Unbeaten this year on the cross field. Delayed his start with all that he's achieved on the road, and of course the wages that he's paid by his team Jumbo-Visma to concentrate on that. But they realise that this is a big part of his brand, a big part of how he builds up to those road events, a big part of how we love him as an athlete. A look behind, he won't see his rivals because he's about to take that final couple of turns, take on the finish line and build on his unbeaten run. Here's the man who's pushed him the closest today, Michael van Toerenhout, with Wout van Aert in front, but he's not going to catch him. It's the Belgian champion. It's the man of the moment, the man of the year, the Belgian sportsman of the year. He started the day picking up that trophy. He ends the day 56 minutes into racing as winner of the H2O for the first time in 5 years. He's the first Belgian to win it since he did the deal in 2016. And today it's been another moment to take a bow. Exhibition from the main man. It's 6 from 6. Yet again, it's Wout van Aert. Michael van Toerenhout, yes, you can hear it. The announcer says chapeau. No wonder. What a ride from him. And he finishes 13 seconds back. Brilliant stuff from Van Toerenhout. Mr. Consistent after winning in Namur, keeps his form. And here's the diesel engine who gets better and better as the race goes on. Toon Aerts extends his general classification lead. The key number there being 27. He leads by 48 seconds over Eli Iserbyt at the minute. It looks as though that lead is about to be extended by quite a long way indeed. A super ride from Corné van Kessel, getting the better of his teammate Quinten Hermans today. He's going to come in after Laurens Sweeck here, who was the early leader. Sweeck finishing in 5th position. Hermans continuing his impressive rise to prominence. He finishes at 58 seconds. There's Felipe Orts. Good top 7 for the Spanish champ in really muddy conditions. And Tim Merlier, not quite the fast finish we've been used to seeing him on the road, but this is his first love. All about the cross. He's at 1 minute and 9.